Okay, over rationalization. We have to start with what is rationalization. So Weber's dictionary defines it as a noun and says here that it is the act, process, or result of rationalizing, a way of describing, interpreting, or explaining something, such as bad behavior, that makes it seem proper and more attractive. Four examples were here. Nitsu Abebe says, they're masters of high speed sophistry and self serving rationalizations, and they threaten one another as if the power of threats lies mainly in how elegantly expressed they are. Leonard Pitts Jr. says that, but that's a convenient rationalization that removes from the rest of us the onus for doing the right thing, even when the wrong thing is alluring and nobody would blame you for doing it. Ralph Ellison says that people rationalize what they shun or what they are incapable of dealing with. These superstitions and their rationalizations become ritual as they govern behavior. And lastly, Kurt Gray and Chelsea Sheen wrote, importantly, these perceptions of victimhood were automatic and effortless, not belabored rationalizations. So Max Weber is coined as the founder, one of the founders of sociology. So when they're talking about rationalization and starting to really deep dive this stuff, it's because this guy is born in 1864. So he is likely, it's 1890s maybe, right? Early 1900s, where he's in his 40s. So he's in his maturity and he's been looking at it. He's also beginning to live under Marxism. Karl Marx is getting really big in Germany at this time in history. So these guys are looking at what industrialized efficiency and how to get a uniformity out of all of society so that this structure works. Now, the idea that it's good for the whole herd, that goes against natural sciences and it comes into social sciences. So Max Weber argued that they were two totally different things. Up until this point in history, all philosophy was based on different connections. There wasn't this industrialized Marxism present yet. So this comes into our materialized world, right? Which is really big here in the West. So it says here, he made the historical movement away from institutional structures that engendered actions based on the emotional, mystical, tradition, or religious. So freedoms, basically, institutes that were based on mystical. So before we get the word like quantum and science, it was metaphysics. So when you hear words like mystical, it's because it described a science, or it really did. So it's not a woo, it's just such an old word that our cartoons, in my opinion, have changed the meaning of these things into like wizardry and whatever. But it's not. These are old like chemistry principles and the unexplained, right? That could be anything that you could think of. I mean, if you're going to watch ghost stories, then you believe that there's more than just the material world. So the idea here is that Max Weber and these guys are pulling away from that, because if people have freedom of thought and critical thinking, well, if we're not all uniform, we're going to stand up. We're going to say like, whoa, that's dangerous, or like, whoa, that's not helping. And they don't want any back talk. So in these ideas and these social structures, the idea is to pump it out the same, no matter what, no matter what sector it is. So, like, letting other people have power over you is your box, right? Like, it's not so deep as they know your name and then they're doing this to you. It's like we've given away power to join this society. And now I'm looking at a society not knowing that, like, maybe I have an option to participate. Um, and that these guys that the West is kind of really structured on now is they didn't want us to free think, right? It's efficiency first, because like that would come down to a survival model, in my opinion, where it was like, as long as we had everything we needed, then like, well, why do you need to just daydream? That's not efficient, that's not productive. But in daydream is creativity, and I've got a podcast going up on YouTube where it's more like a radio. You're not going to see my face so much, but we get into words like that, definition and critical thinking, because in the podcast I want to like bring us into a space of understanding where my theory and philosophy comes from, so that it's defined, right? And then you can decide if you want to check that out or not. But I want you to know what the rant was, because it has actually made our lives. We have not made all the choices we thought we did. So he said here that, it was said here on Abesco, the research database, that he made the historical movement away from institutional structures that engendered actions based on the emotional, mystical, traditional, and religious, into institutional structures that produced actions based on reason, calculability, predictability, and efficiency. His primary philosophy of history was that rationalization brings benefits to organizations while trapping workers in feelings of disenchantment. Despite the shortcomings of the process, Weber viewed it as efficient and necessary in working structures inside factories and industrialism. But he very much was pointing out that it wasn't good for the human being itself. So more needed to be looked at in how to make a balance. So we would call it today work-life balance, right? So the primary concern was happening in modern Germany, like I said, around Karl Marx's time. So he argued that the social sciences were so different from natural sciences that they needed their own distinct but similar scientific approach. So throughout his career, Weber continued to develop the idea of rationalization and identified 4 types of rationality: practical rationality, theoretical rationality, substantive rationality, and formal rationality. That one being the most coercive kind. He critiqued reason and enlightenment thinking to lead towards a rationalization of the economy, would lead to disenchantment. So, critiques that he had critiqued that the Enlightenment movement and its pursuit of scientific rationality have stripped humanity of its passions and virility. Sigmund Freud believed that civilization uses laws, norms, and guilt to create an agency within that keeps watch over one's actions and intention. Conformity separates the individual from his or her natural instincts, and this causes discontent. We are in a mental health crisis here in the way that our societies are running. And I mean, this was being predicted 100 years ago. For me, a lot of my research over the last 4 or 5 years has been looking at history and behavior. This stuff has always fascinated me. So Foucault in 1979. So these are guys that build upon this principle into the modern world after the second WW, right? So they believed that the institutions like schools, banks, hospitals, and newspapers of the modern state and economy create a great discipline within that takes hold of the body, training it and forcing it to carry out its tasks. So, the, in my mind, the McDonaldization of my life is very evident in how I was just trained to pick things because they grabbed a hold of the body, mind, and spirit in my theory, and repetition is how our memory works, right? So if we're constantly seeing the same thing over and over again, we do things automatic and effortless. And if everybody else around us is doing it, it's total conformity. It's just the definition of the word. This isn't about aggression in any form where it's, do we know we're conforming at such an inner deep level, because things as simple as like, this is just the way it is, wait forever in line, you don't have access until the store opens. Like 100 years ago, people walked into their backyards, they walked into their pantries. So a big part of where I'm at is how much my society has been modeled, right? Like how it's just a norm, and you feel kind of guilty for not participating, or you feel a little weird, but it's like, I don't know, everything is 1,000 times around me, and it's money, it's taxes, it's all these institutional structures that say, no, this is the way it works, and if we all do it the same way, this is the outcome. Well, that's a predictable algorithm, and that works for whoever wanted the outcome, right? And if nobody knows they're participating in a challenge, are you even trying to win? That's where I come from, right? I love a challenge because I do want to get to the end of it. I don't, it's not necessarily who I beat. I just want to win. To me, in my mind, finishing it is the win. So it's the task, right? And I think in forcing us to carry out a task, where they were talking about the convenient rationalization that removes the group and each individual from the onus for doing the right thing, even though the wrong thing is alluring and nobody would blame you. Well, why would nobody blame you? Well, because McDonaldization has no morality. So if there's no morality, then nobody's going to blame you. So then you're in a place where you're looking at some behaviors and you're like, whoa, I don't like it. What? And we've watched so much of it just run away like a freight train. And you could choose what that is in your world. I have several things in sociology that is going on, but sure, you can nail down in your life with those words, what behaviors are we forced into? And is it as simple as having everything right at your fingertips? Is it as simple as being forced to perform all these tasks because they complete the outcome? They're predictable, you can trust them. But if you step out of the structure, there's no knowing what to do outside of it. So that's been a real journey for me. And I'm super fortunate because I still have family that live in the old world ways, on big farms with big families, and they've modernized. They do steel work. We've got international contracts where that's what Manitoba does. If you don't know this place, check it out. But I do get to see how storage works. I do see how husbandry works. I do. Yeah, my mom taught me how to sew. Right, I was sewing since I was a kid. So the idea of taking it a step further for me and sourcing my own materials, in whatever form that takes. Like if I gotta really put some sweat into making my own linens because now I gotta get some sheep and feed some sheep. If I do that, I can provide my own clothing, but at the same time, I can provide for my family too. for people who don't have the time to do it. See, the idea that we're just like buying all this stuff from other countries, and that like, come on, if we have this much plastic and acrylic in our clothing, you can't tell me that the giant headlines that you see about sweatshops, that it's not more about the fact that the machines are just making our stuff. So I don't want that. I want a natural textile. I want to support somebody around here who made it, or I want to support my family by making it myself. And I've been really big against the idea of all this globalization from the beginning. There is so much that has always bothered me about not being able to produce my northern cousins' meats, the hunted and gathered foods, because they don't meet regulation of these standardized institutions that we're governed under. And in order for me to do that, I have to step out of the society. So I don't know. Maybe I needed a couple of maps. Because I don't know how to do it either. But I like to take notes. I like to read books. And I have the time to do these things, chunks here and there. Getting an education right now in psychology is fascinating. And I'm coming to from a place of learning myself, where it's like, I have words now to describe this stuff. And it's real. When you feel like you're just kind of going along and you're discontented, or you're doing that same thing you've done every weekend and you're like disenchanted with it, I think a big part of it was for me finding things at home I really loved to do again. And a big part of that is like the yard, the growing the food, the sewing the clothes. Like, very fortunate to live in the Jetsons era too, where like my friends got TVs and phones in their fridges. You know, we're here, and have we tapped back into that childlike mind, and like, what did we want to do before we were constructed into this society? You know, before you knew what society was, like, what were you thinking? What did you want to do? Because I found watching my twins and then going back to that pure space as an adult with like drive, some business sense, maybe some experience, some life experiences and mistakes, you know, all of these things combined right now. If I go take all those dreams that I thought were possible, that could earn my keep or could provide for me in the way that I wanted to, I'm big enough now, you know, and I'm strong enough to take on that work. I'm young enough to do it for a super long time. And I think the construct is, so you're not thinking way out there. I mean, it sounds dead obvious, but having a homestead right now, it's like, oh man, I'm thinking 5-6 years out just on the apple trees. So that's been a brain training, growing my own food, the waiting, the patience. I mean, again, if you know me, oh my gosh, the speed and learning to slow down, wait, look into it, not make a snap decision right away, and not shun things that I'm incapable of dealing with. You know, the polite thing to do, the Canadian thing to do, right? Friendly Manitoban thing to do is to not join, right? It's not anymore about these negative structures in language that we're using, where everything is like, it's too hard, it's too whatever. In my opinion, it is way too hard to keep track of this funny money. Oh my gosh. So it's a different world. It absolutely is. But we're in the Jetsons again, guys. Like, I'm talking to you through a portal. Talking to the void, man. We're talking to nobody. That's cool too. See a couple of your likes though, so I'm gonna keep going. But it's, you know, we're in a really cool place where we have still just enough of the knowledge of the old times to do for ourselves more, but we're also in a place where we can like access the products. We're not dealing with trade lines. So for me, you know, especially living in a place that is predominantly Métis people, I think that, like, if we go back in time and we look at how that merger happened because of boats and trade and goods, and the fact that we couldn't get things without waiting a really long time for it to show up. So we made do and we found other options that were close at hand. I think, we got these drones flying stuff around, and we got more boats, and you can feel how you want about, the impacts of that. But I can source some really cool stuff. And then when you're making it for yourself and you're coming from a high quality place, you're not doing that materialism and just buying the same old stuff off the same old store because it works, old faithful, familiar, comfortable. It comes down to making it last and making a really good product. Like, if you want to know why those products that are homemade cost so much money, they last all year. You didn't know that because you've been raised in a construct of things run out. And they run out because we depend on this society that's been built. It's designed to do this. You'll never change it. There's no talking and protesting it, in my opinion, that's going to change it. It's our behaviors. It comes down to society's behavior, and it's not about checking your neighbor. It's not about what everyone else is doing. It's inaction. It's us not saying, no, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'm going to figure out how to make that myself. Because again, too, the homemade and natural products are expensive, and that is way out of people's budget. But it's because it takes time. And like, if you can just go for a walk somewhere where there's a bit of more or less a clean park, you have to understand plants are filters, guys. Yeah, don't let them scare you that like plants can't be taken from public spaces. Be aware of what's close by. But like, you rinse a plant like you rinse a head of lettuce. We have to, in my opinion, get back to natural sciences and understand that social science is all we got right now. It's all we got in the West. It's social science. Everything they're going to tell you about, from space travel to it, these are all definable, predictable constructs that there's an algorithm, and the word algorithm is a process to come to a predictable outcome. So it's geez, I don't even know how to say it without saying it's a game, right? They build the storyline, the level, and then they get to that point and they go on again. So every time that we stay in this rationalization of like, that's just the way it is, and we grumble about it, it's because you're ignoring your instinct. It's not normal. It just is an organism. It's not normal. And then how out of touch are we as an organism? It's just so much thought and eyeball processing that we're behaving like machines already, just rationalizing everything and making the next decision, And yeah, for me, it was really hard to sit down, slow down, like year and a half of college, slow. And still, you can see my energy. And I do believe that that's a behaviorism that is more a product, that ADHD behavior we're all learning, middle-aged people have. I totally think that it's the schooling and the food, and it was the fast and it was the efficient. So it was like nobody was being treated individually for their success, right? So then, excuse me, nutrition just becomes mainstream. We're told on a bunch of posters that this is what's good for you, but it's like, do you even know what you're deficient of? Did you know our doctors aren't checking our blood anymore? But that was standard practice before 1974, is they looked at your blood to see if your blood was healthy. So like, they would check you. They would know right away if kids were like low iron or whatever. And you were told what foods to eat. I'm born in 81. I had an older doctor. I remember up to about 10 years old, like, my doctor gave us home remedies to go to. And then when I was raising my kids, it was like standard practice, and we have a lot of standardized practice. So I this is it. This is what I'm curious about, and this is where I come from. With every topic we're gonna cover, for as long as I feel that this is good for me and good for us, or whatever, for the internet universe. This is where I come from. This is it. It's the language that's been constructed for me. So I have a hard time communicating with the people around me because we're using rational thinking and rational words, and it's causing disenchantment. It's like we don't even want to talk to each other that way. So we're like, I don't know. I hear it. It's different. I remember walking around the grocery stores and like the ladies were chatty and everybody was like friendly and naughty and people stopped. And I meant naughty, like nodding. Sorry. Um, and people took their time to browse and peruse, and people waited in line fine without cell phones, because you weren't rushing the old lady to count change in front of you. Now we have like a debit machine that is like 30 times faster than what money was 30 years ago, and more impatient. I think that scale keeps rising because, like, I haven't seen a dip. And science says that a pressure cooker isn't just going to stop on its own. That is, you need a release valve, you need participation, you need balance, you need reduction in all that energy. Yeah, scientific. I don't have an opinion for you guys. I don't see the rationale behind living in a world of rationality, because that is starting to feel, I don't know, about some of the things that my parents were warning me about society before the Berlin Wall came down. I won't say it out loud too much because I don't want to pick off too many algorithm words, but like there's a lot of things, guys, a lot of things that happen in our life, and we're shunning the things we are incapable of dealing with. Like, these perceptions of victimhood are automatic, okay? And they're effortless. This is gonna take some work. And I know that because I'm working on it right now. Part of doing this is therapeutic too for me. It's a release valve, it's so I don't have to sit here and feel tension in my body about how all of these things are right in my face, right? And then do it all by myself. That's not fun. I'm excited about so much of the stuff I found, and I'm excited to share it with people who are stuck in full-time jobs or stuck in 2 jobs. I was that lady 10 years ago, night and day, and then still put your kids in sports and still party on the weekends. Whoa, like, I'm learning this right now with you guys, and this is, it's like on teams. You got to have somebody who's leading in order to learn how to play a sport. Like, somebody's going to show you how to do it. So I'm the weirdo who's learning how to do it, and if you're interested in what that might look like, then that's what I'm doing on here. I appreciate you guys so much, and you're not going to get a lot of this on Facebook anymore. This was the introduction to my YouTube channel, and where I'm going to go with it. It's philosophy discussion. It's a lot of fun. You're not going to hear me rant. You're just going to hear me bring stuff to the table that it's my bias. It's what I think is making me discontent. What's got me disenchanted, because I was enchanted by Earth. I was enchanted by all the possible things, and I am a lot. And the world around me is the thing that brings the big cloud over my head. So I want out of that structure. I do. Goodbye, society. Right? And hello, human. Right? Like, let's go do that. Let's go do that.